Hello and welcome back to the PNN. Today is day 11. My name is Parker Taft. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. Now we are going into Finance 101, PYF. Well, many of you are probably going to be asking, first off, what is PYF? And second off, why do I need to worry about money? Well, since the summer is fast approaching and many of you will be either looking for or having summer jobs and earning money for college and other expenses, I thought it'd be important to teach you a little bit about financial literacy and how to improve your own personal finances and allow you for comfortable financial security throughout your life. So we're going to start at the basics, as we always do, and that is with three letters, PYF. So you're asking, what is PYF? Well, it stands for Pay Yourself First. Now, I know the memes, I know the arguments, I've seen them all. But from what I've read with Robert T. Kiyosaki, The Automatic Millionaire, Richest Man in Babylon, and from what I've learned in my own personal finance courses, it is a sound principle. So, for those of you who don't know, it is the founding hallmark of successful financial planning. It simply means to set aside a portion of your income each month for yourself, for you to save, and prioritizing saving. It comes from Robert T. Kiyosaki's book, and then Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then The Richest Man in Babylon. And basically, each week when you get a paycheck or month, depending on how you're paid, you take the first, say, 10 to 15% of it, and you pay yourself with it. You pay for your future by saving it or investing it in a retirement account. And then you take what's ever left over, then 90 or 85% that's left over, and then you use that money to pay for bills, and what's ever left over from bills you use for, expenditures that aren't necessarily essential but are something you want, like, say, a new video game or basketball or going to the movies. And that is basically what it means. It is prioritizing your saving over everything else. And, there's an emphasis to save, save, save. Well, you don't necessarily want to save for the sake of saving, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So, why is it so important? Well, it helps you develop and prioritize saving because the first thing you do with your paycheck, or at least a portion of your paycheck, before you pay anyone else, before you pay the government, before you pay your electric bill or your rent, you're paying yourself. You're paying towards your future. Now, I like to point out that this doesn't advocate you not paying your bills. No, that's not what we're advocating. But you should be setting aside at least some small portion of your income to pay towards your future. Second, it helps you develop sound financial habits. By prioritizing saving, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities in terms of investments and financial purchases, and gives you a more stable platform on which to base your economic, social, and political futures. Third, it teaches you how to live below your means. By taking a portion off the top of your paycheck, you're basically taking it out of circulation, and especially if you set up a separate bank account, it's out of your mind, so you're living below your means. Many people today live up to or above their means, and thus they live paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. You don't want that. You want to be able to save and invest and prepare yourself for your financial future. So by living at or above your means, you don't necessarily have that option because money's coming in one hand and is going out the other. You're basically working to exist rather than working to gain leverage to purchase assets and expand your financial future. By eliminating the idea, so we'll use an example my business teacher gave. Say you got a raise of, say, $5 for the year, and you previously were making $10, so now you're making $15. So your budget is all set and your expenses are all set around $10. Well, most people would go out and say buy a new car or a flat screen TV, and all of a sudden the $5 extra, up to $15 an hour, which they thought was going to improve their life so much and allow them to save and invest, all of a sudden they are in the same boat that they were before. Whereas in the pay yourself first, a person just maintains their lifestyle at the $10 level and saves the $5. By doing this, they're living below their means while also saving money and investing towards their future. So when, say, the next year rolls around and they get another $5 raise and it bumps them up to $20 an hour. And yes, I realize this is unrealistic, but it's just a thought experiment. And it bumps them up to $20 an hour. So they can increase their standard of living and quality of life to the $15 an hour mark and still be saving $5 a year. Well, not $5 a year because they're being paid $5, but you get what I mean. They're saving that $5 and hopefully investing it towards retirement or a house. And then lastly, it helps you prepare for emergencies. By saving that money, especially early on in your financial and job careers, it allows you to establish an emergency fund that you can use, say your car breaks down, or your furnace goes, or a tornado hits or something like that, or you're laid off. It allows you to cover those emergency expenses without having to go into debt or rely on some dubious lending institutions like the payday loan institutions. So by practicing saving, you're preparing yourself against emergency contingencies. So moving on swiftly, why people don't do it. It's surprising. It seems so simple. Why don't people do it? Well, mainly, people have been brainwashed by general society that they first have to pay the government in taxes, then they have to pay their bills, and then they spend their money on whatever they want to spend it on. And then whatever happens to be left over is their savings, and they put into savings and investments. That's not the case. That is bullcrap. That is leading you to get stuck in the rat race and just working for money, coming in one hand and out the other for the rest of your life. And it also leaves you woefully unprepared financially and opens you up to catastrophes, economic, political, social, which jeopardizes your quality of life and standard of living. Perfect example is the coronavirus. Many people were living paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden, coronavirus forces this huge shutdown, and people can't pay their bills, and their savings are so meager that they can only last a mere handful of weeks, and that's at strict rationing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And that's not the way a person should live. So instead, you should follow sound financial and saving principles. So how do I start? For those of you who are interested and haven't tuned out by now, the best way is to make it automatic. The best way to do anything is make it automatic. That way it takes out the thinking process and the temptation to say, oh, I'll do it next month, or put it off. It makes you accountable without actually you having to be accountable. So set up a automatic deduction either through your employer or your bank, and have them deduct money from your check each week or month, pay period, we'll say pay period, and put it into a savings account. You can either set up a separate savings account from your checking account, or you can deposit your entire check in the checking account and then take, say, the 85% left over from your savings and bring it over into your checking account to pay for expenses and discretionary expenditures. Discretionary meaning stuff you want, video games, going out to eat, going to the movies. And you can start off saving any amount. The recommended amount, especially if you're wanting to invest in retirement, is 10 to 15%, but whatever you feel is comfortable that you can live without, 5%. Say you make $100 a week. Is $5 really going to make that much of a difference? It's probably a Starbucks coffee, and you don't really need the Starbucks coffee anyway. And just imagine, if you spend, say, a Starbucks coffee a day, that's $5 over 5 work days. So that's $25 a week over a year. You end up spending more on Starbucks coffee than you would on savings if you were the average person, because people don't think it's like an automatic purchase. And another thing is create a separate account. I believe I already mentioned this, but I'll go over it again. Create a separate account where your savings are funneled into. Like I said, you can either have the savings in a separate account that is funneled off your checking account, or you can do the opposite and put your check in the savings account and then funnel off what you need for your everyday daily expenses. Plus, it eliminates the temptation to stick your hand in the cookie jar, because if you keep everything in the checking account, you're more likely to spend all the money in the checking account, regardless of what you're intending it for. So it's vitally important that you create at least some degree of separation between your everyday expenses and finances and your savings account for emergencies, that rainy day fund, the FU money, as I like to say, where, if something especially reprehensible or disgusting to you happens at work, you have the freedom and ability to quit without having to worry about losing that sort of paycheck or source of income. So, as we continue on, uh, say you're saving and you've done this and you've built up a small nest egg, let's say a couple $1,000s. I have the money now. What do I do with it? So, first off, when you're first starting off, when setting up a savings account, if you saved a couple $100s, I advise putting it into a high interest savings account. Typically, these restrict the amount of withdrawals that you can make in a particular month or quarter. So it restricts your access to the funds, but not horribly. You still have freedom of access, but it is not as free as a checking account. And then, of course, certificates of deposit. Basically, it's a certificate at a small interest rate, usually around the single-digit percentages, 3%. I believe was one of the better ones I've seen recently. And you basically leave your money in the bank for a set period of time, say 6 months or a year, and that money is at the bank. You can't access it, and then you'll have to pay a penalty if you have to liquidate it. But it's a pretty safe investment, and it still allows you a relative access to your funds without the inherent risk, and you get a nice return. I advise a certificate of deposit if you are trying to save up to start investing, or you have like a giant emergency fund that you are just keeping in a low interest savings account that is big but is not, but can still make money for you while you're also investing money, a sort of self-sustaining account. So instead, put it in a high interest savings account or into a CD, because you'll still have access to it in case of emergencies, but it'll still accrue some interest and go some way towards self-sustaining. And then the recommendation to for building an emergency fund is typically 6 to 12 months of living expenses. I would lean more towards the 12 months, especially because of the whole coronavirus lockdown and the indeterminate amount of time we were stuck in it. I know we're now coming out of it, but it's still, the no end in sight sort of financial emergency makes me would lean more towards the 12 months of living expenses. Next, once you sort of got that plan settled down, got an emergency fund, look into employer-sponsored retirement plans. 401k, pensions, because typically you can, typically you can take money right off the top of your paycheck. Your employer can do that and deposit it right into the pension or 401k account. And most of the times the employers will actually match the contribution, so you're actually making double. So say you put $5 aside for your pension, and the employer up to a certain amount will match that. So he'll put in another $5, so you're actually putting in $10, which over time will grow your retirement account. Plus, it's all before tax, so it can also decrease your taxable income. And then there's individual retirement accounts, IRAs, or self-directed, like Kyog. Basically, they're retirement accounts that you set up personally and contribute to fund your own retirement. And now there's limits on how much you can deposit and when you can deposit, etc. And we'll go into that later when I do a presentation on the different types of ways to fund your retirement. But a good place to start is looking into retirement and then investing in mutual funds in the stock market. Once you sort of have a good financial plan, savings, you're starting towards retirement, look into mutual fund. Especially, it's good if you're investing towards retirement to look into mutual funds. They're very good and pretty reliably safe. Have a standard return of about 7 to 13%. And then after you're financially stable, you can start dabbling around in the stock market or real estate and build up funds to, say, purchase put a down payment on a home for yourself, or buy an apartment building and rent it out. So you can see how saving money can give you a stable financial platform to which to expand your financial wealth and quality of life and standards of living, definitely. Lastly, before I go, I want to talk to you about the power of compound interest, because as I said, savings accounts, certificates of deposit, money market accounts, retirement accounts, mutual funds, stocks, they all have a rate of return or an interest that accrues on it as long as the money's in the account for a certain period of time. And a good rate of return, as I mentioned before, is 7 to 13%, which will grow your nest egg over time. So basically, a small amount of money invested over a period of time. So you say, $10 this week, $10 next week, $10, and as over time, by the power of compound interest, if you choose your investments wisely, your tiny contributions of $10, two Starbucks coffees a week that you're going without, it can build up to a sizable nest egg, which can, help you in your retirement. You can make millions of dollars. A good example of this, a very simplistic example, but a good example, is I give you an option. I can either give you $1 million today or a penny, which I will double every day for a month. Now, many people are saying, oh, just give me the $1 million and we'll be done with it. But that is actually the poor choice, because if you take a penny and it doubles every day for a month, you'd end up with millions, if not billions, of dollars by the end of the month because of the power of compounding. Because each day I'm doubling it. So day one, you only have one penny. Then I double that and give you 2 pennies, and then 3 pennies, and then so forth and so on. And it looks slow for about like the first 10 days when you're still dealing in just pennies. But after that, it grows very rapidly. So it just goes to show you the power of compounding interest. And on the flip side of that, if someone's in huge amounts of credit card debt or has a large amount of loans from banks or the dreaded payday loan institutions, gives me the shivers, that tend to carry high interest rates, the same thing happens. You get behind on a payment, they tack on fees and penalties, and sometimes they'll up the interest rates, and all of a sudden, that what you considered a small amount of money, say you owe $10 to someone, but you miss a payment, and all of a sudden it just grows and grows, and the amount you owe to them grows and grows and grows because of unpaid interest, fees, penalties, interest on the fees and penalties, more fees and penalties, more interest on those fees and penalties. It just compounds and it's like a giant snowball that starts to roll out of control. You want to be the guy who starts the snowball and makes it into a giant snowman. You don't want to be the guy who kicks over a piece of snow while walking downhill and then turns into a giant snowball and rolls down and crushes them. So if there's a piece of advice two pieces of advice that you learn from this presentation, and that's all that you take away from it, is pay yourself first and the power of compound interest. And another piece of advice, to a lesser extent, but still important, is make your finances automatic. Automatic investment plans, automatic savings plans. That way it takes the temptation out of your hands to spend that money instead of saving and investing it. So that's it for today. As usual, I have my sources and further reading listed. Not that much today, but it's just a quick overview of the pay yourself first philosophy and the topics I discussed. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I look forward to seeing how your 30-day challenges have been going. So leave comments in the comment section below regarding that. If you have any advice on how I can improve or ideas for future episodes, please also comment below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. This is the BNN Broadcast signing off.